But meanwhile, it's Jim Crane going into uncharted territory. I know he's been in the luxury tax once, but didn't actually have to pay for it because the next year was the COVID year, and Major League Baseball didn't force owners for whatever reason to pay the competitive balance tax that year. Well, now Josh Hader's a Houston Astro. 5-year, $95 million deal. Average on that is $19 million a year. They were already on the cusp, some projections, of the competitive balance tax. Some had them a little bit over. Now there's no doubt. Now there's no question. Jim Crane going comfortably into the luxury tax by signing Josh Hader, a setup man, a closer, a reliever, to a $19 million a year deal. And Blankers, to me, you have the best 7, 8, 9 in all of baseball.
Yeah, you can call him an out-getter, whatever you want to call him. Call him a Houston Astro, and then call me happy as can be, because this was amazing. I was walking up the stairs in the building. I walked in, and Joe George goes, well, Josh Hader just became an Astro. It's official. I was like, wait a minute, what? How did I miss that? And then he tells me, no, it's right here. And I was like, oh, my God, this is absolutely amazing, because we kicked it around yesterday. But I think that we also kicked around the real possibility that it might just be positioning between, agents and teams and things like that. The fact that it's a reality, and the fact that they were willing to spend on that size deal because he got what he wanted, he became the highest paid relief pitcher in baseball. You look at it and go, my goodness, does this solidify a lot with the Houston Astros bullpen? And you've got choices galore now.
Yeah, there's the questions I think that you have leading up to spring training will be like, who has the 7th, who has the 8th, who has the 9th. Everybody's going to have their own answer for that. I think Espada is a progressive manager where he's going to – I think they're going to keep Presley in the closer role because he's kind of earned that, being like the elder statesman. Some people, well, you're not going to pay $19 million for a reliever and have him not be the closer. I disagree, because why aren't the biggest 3 outs in the 7th inning if 3, 4, 5 are coming up? What if you're playing the Phillies, and I know this is a bad example because they're in the National League, but Kyle Schwarber, whoever bats second, and then Bryce Harper's coming up. Well, I want Josh Hader to face that pocket of hitters. I don't care what inning it is once you turn the game over to the bullpen. So I think we a lot of times overrate the closer, the setup, the 7th inning role. I think Presley will stay in the 9th inning. I think Hader and Abreu will kind of rotate on the 7th, 8th, depending on the matchups and things like that. But I think this is a playoff move because, you might have to give some guys some days off, right? Like if you pick back-to-back games, you're probably not going to pitch on that third day. You're going to have to stagger things around a bit. But if you're paying a $19 million reliever as a weapon, that to me is a move that a World Series contender that expects to be playing in the postseason makes. Because we know that in Major League Baseball, in the playoffs, that with more off days in a playoff series than like in the regular season, that you can trim the fat on the pitching staff a bit, where a 13-man pitching staff can pretty much become like a 9, 10-man pitching staff, and you can go to your best relievers more often because you have days off in the series. Now, whenever you stack 3 elite relievers in the back end of your bullpen, to me, that's going to pay off more in the postseason than it necessarily would in the regular season, although it's still plus EV in the regular season. But this is a type of move, in my opinion, that a team with World Series aspirations, a team that expects to be playing a lot of playoff games make, where you're signing a $19 million reliever either to replace Ryan Presley, which I don't think is the case, or to give you critical outs late in game situations.
Yeah, and I think it can be both, because I think you're right, and they did this probably with the playoffs in mind, but also the fact that they knew they had a couple of spots in the bullpen to fill, but they also know that Presley's a different kind of closer, and because of the fact that he's had some issues in the past with health concerns, he doesn't really like to go back-to-backs. He doesn't like to go, 3 games in 4 nights. Those are the kind of things where now you don't have to worry about it. And then, like you said, whether it's in the playoffs, and we were talking about with Abreu and just use him in the highest of high leverages. Well, having a lefty that's a power lefty like that in the bullpen, now Espada can do it a multitude of different ways, looking at the matchups with the lefty, looking at the matchups for the high leverage. But you've got the 2 flamethrowers, a righty and a lefty. And then, as you said, you have the seasoned veteran that has closed for the majority of the years of this run of the Astros golden years of baseball in Presley. To have those 3 elite type guys at the back of your bullpen, we talked about it. It shortens the game to 6 innings. It gives everybody an extra jolt of energy, knowing that, hey, from a starting pitching perspective to the offense, you get a lead going into the 6th, 7th, in the 7th inning. It could be lights out on most nights because these guys have the stuff and they have the ability and they have the experience.
Yeah, this is it's best back end of the bullpen in all Major League Baseball for me. 7, 8, 9. I think Presley, who's I think going to be your closers, I think the lesser of the three. I think Abreu's better than Presley. I think Hader's better than Presley. Now, Presley's been great in the postseason, and again, he's done it really well for a long time for the Astros. That's why I think he should still keep that role until he shows you otherwise. But you have a dominant back end of the bullpen. I think the other part of the conversation is Jim Crane just went $19 million-ish into the competitive balance tax when we've been hearing all offseason, oh, that Jim Crane, he's a tightwad. Oh, that Jim Crane's not willing to spend money. Oh, that Jim Crane's not opening up his wallet. You can't say that anymore. You can't say Jim Crane's going $20 million into the competitive balance tax.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're absolutely right. Look, we talked about just from the standpoint of they haven't done a whole lot, but we were both very adamant in saying, look, I'm not saying he's cheap. But there are plenty of people out there that were saying that and were thinking that he didn't want to go over the threshold. He did not want to even tiptoe it. Now he just kicked a line right through it and just said, okay, here, hold my beer, sip your tea, and watch this because this is going to, knock your socks off. If you're an Astros fan, you have to be ecstatic because everything that you had to sit there and wait and twiddle your thumbs and think about all the negativity of not doing anything except for a backup catcher this offseason, you now just got a healthy, massive dose of reality in the fact that Jim Crane is looking squarely at winning and chasing it down again. This is a huge move if you're an Astros fan, and this is a telltale sign for Jim Crane to be able to say, hey, look, I opened my checkbook. I absolutely put my money where my mouth was, and now I answered a lot of questions by getting a premier closer to add to this team.
See, I figured that the Astros were still going to add a reliever. I would have never in my wildest imaginations until yesterday, because I do respect Chandler Roan's reporting. I never until yesterday expected the Astros to be shopping at the top of the market, though. I expected them to wait the market out. In fact, they kind of started the market because I think the entire relief market was waiting on Josh Hader to sign. Like guys like Robert Stevenson now is going to be finding a home. Some of the other top relievers now will find a home because they have that's the way free agency works. Like look at the Shohei Ohtani. Like he started a little bit of movement, just a little bit of movement. Like you still have a lot of really good free agents that are out there as well. So I never thought that the Astros would be in the market for the top reliever in the offseason. I'm surprised by it. I give Dana Brown credit for it too because we had heard that Josh Hader, the figure on him was going to be like $20 million. Joe told us yesterday he wanted the Mets closer money, which is over $20 million. Well, the Astros got him at 19, so not necessarily like a huge sell, but not to $20 million. And also the patience to wait to do it until January 19th. This wasn't like Bagwell chasing after Rafael Montero almost as the free agency opened up as well. And then I give Jim Crane the credit too. Hey, he signed a guy for $19 million. People are saying, well, this is going to cost the Astros a chance at Bregman or a chance at Kyle Tucker. I don't know if I buy that. Like my feelings on Bregman and Tucker is that it's kind of case by case. It's a separate issue. If anything, I feel more positive about Tucker being re-signed though, because this is like the first time really since Zach Greinke technically, but this is an example of Jim Crane showing that he's willing to spend money. It's like, okay, well if he's willing to spend money on a Hader, maybe he'd be willing to spend money on a Kyle Tucker, maybe to a lesser extent on an Alex Bregman, although I think Bregman's not nearly the priority that Kyle Tucker would be. So if anything, to me, it's a neutral. I don't take it one way or the other. But if I had to pick one side of it, I would take it more as a positive that Crane's showing that he's a willing spender.
I agree with you. Look, I think that they will have some bigger issues to deal with down the road, as you mentioned, with Bregman and Tucker. And until Altuve signed, the assumption is he's going to sign. It's going to be a done deal, but it isn't until it is. But you feel pretty strongly he's going to be back. But we've seen some of the creativity with what the Dodgers did. We've seen some of the other possibilities. We also know that I don't think it's changed Jim Crane's overall philosophy a whole lot in terms of the longer-term deals, the real long deals at the huge amount of money. But even this one was a little bit farther in the threshold than I think we've seen him go in the past. But the fact that this shows that he's in go-for-it mode again for this season gives you the reasonable hope that, hey, it's not just one and done either. It's hopefully this year, and then how do we get creative and what do we do going forward so that we can try and handle the next guys when their contracts come up or bring in guys if we don't sign those guys so that the window stays open. Regardless, if the window stays open and they keep dedicated themselves to winning it and going for it, then as a fan, that's all you can ask for.
I mean, this will be the second biggest contract paid to a reliever. So, like, I don't – like this to me is Crane going away from his comfort zone.
Yeah, I think from a pitcher, it's different too. Like a position player, then they want to explore the 8 to 10 year deals. But for a pitcher to go 5 years, it is getting out of his comfort zone. I would agree with that. I'm just saying, the deals that we talk about with the $300 million deals and the 10-year deals and the return on investment deals where, guys are just trying to get every dollar they can, and the team knowing the last 3 years or a couple of years are going to be throwaways in the deal. That's not something Crane really wants to do. But the fact that he knows, too, that I think Presley's got, a year or 2 years left on his deal.
So he's got a vesting option next year where if he hits 50 innings that it's going to vest, which, you feel pretty confident that he'll be able to hit that. But a reliever, it's much easier for a reliever not to hit 50 innings than it is for a starter. If Presley's on the injured list for a month, then all of a sudden that 50 innings is in question.
Yeah, but I think that maybe – whether you can think about that factoring in as well, but I just think that look, this is a huge sign to start thinking about the fact that Jim Crane is open-minded in terms of how he goes forward with this franchise, but tries to keep them winning and keep that window open. And so I hope this is just a starting point for how you keep that window open for the next 3-4 years.
Yeah, interesting move because I think it definitely changes the attitude about the Astros from the Astro fan base for most. Some were feeling a little bit down. Hey, wake up! Dana Brown, Crane, open up that pocketbook, all of that stuff. This certainly changes the perception. This certainly changes the attitude and the excitement for the Astros, who will have pitchers and catchers report on Valentine's Day in February. So looks like a good thing. There are some people out there that are critical a little bit of the 5 years, $95 million. You've had people bring up, well, Hader doesn't want to go over an inning. You've had people say, well, Hader's not going to be a setup man on $19 million. I think a lot of what Hader was doing last year was because he hadn't got paid and he was in a contract year and he was making sure he stayed healthy. Maybe that's the case. Maybe it's not the case.